Y'all, these are some of my biggest opinions about the Scream franchise. I love this franchise. I love Ghostface. I think Sid is the GOAT. I love the meta commentary angle. It has defined a big part of my horror fandom. Now, all of that being said, because of that, I have a lot of opinions. Some of them are hot takes, some of them are just deep convictions, and some of them are predictions about what I see and want out of the future of this franchise. So strap in because I've got some that you may applaud and other ones that might make you want to throw a phone at me. Let's go ahead and come out of the gate swinging with the first hot take. Scream 2 is not the best Scream sequel. See, I think it's interesting because horror has two big franchises that tend to dominate the conversation when it comes to the most impassioned and oftentimes rowdy fan bases. That's Halloween and Scream. Two franchises that are intrinsically linked with one another for a variety of reasons, two of which are movies that, in and of themselves, define a generation. They, in and of themselves, tell this story that can sit in a capsule by itself. And because movies are what they are, money is what it is, franchises are what they are, fandoms are what they are, we get sequels. We get extensions of the story. But they're both movies that if not a single solitary other movie was made, this movie would sit fine as a horror story unto itself. And both of these series have complicated track records when it comes to the sequels. And both of these franchises tend to have a lot of back and forth about which one's the best, should they have ever, all of that sort of stuff. And Scream is right there in that mix. And with this franchise, I really view this as this in the same way that I view pizza. Bad pizza is better than no pizza at all. This is my favorite franchise, including six. And so when we talk about sequels, I really think two benefits from its proximity to one. It's you had the phenomenon. You had this movie that is at the top of everybody's list when ranking this franchise. So what do? You take that formula and you try to represent it and have lightning strike twice. That's generally how it goes with sequels, and especially sequels that come out very quickly after the original. Now, I want to be clear here. It's not a bad movie. It's not a trash movie. I just think it's overrated. To me, Scream 2 is just bland. It feels safe in all of the ways that a Scream sequel should not feel. It does exactly, or I should say, it doesn't do exactly what the first one does. And it's like the movie is constantly asking, remember how cool that was in the first one? And then just doing something that's slightly cheaper than the version before it. And it does mesh nicely with the original in tone. It just takes a lot of those same beats and presents them to lesser effect. I thought the college environment was cool. I think it was well done. I love the stylization of the environment. All of that being said, it is stylized. It is manufactured. Whereas 96 feels like 96. Scream 1 feels like it happened at the moment that it actually happened. Now, there may be some that look at Scream 2 and are like, yeah, that's the college experience in the 90s. And that's cool. It's just very niche and very stylized. You've got, but outside of that comparison, you have new friend groups, but similar archetypes. You have a third age or third act stage set piece that fills in for the house party. You've got a movie within a movie commentary with Stab instead of just horror meta like the first one. It's familiar. It's just a little too familiar. And then there's the big decision that everybody talks about, killing Randy. I get what they were going for. The idea was nobody's safe. And if Randy can die, then anyone can die. And that's cool in theory, but in practice, it was a huge mistake and one that in some ways the franchise really never recovered from fully. Randy was the heart of the meta commentary. The franchise was never really the same because it lost that specific energy. Somebody who's funny, aware, dorky, and still feels like a real person. Every attempt at the new Randy is either too self aware, too smug, or just doesn't hit the same. And so now you have a sequel that plays it safe with structure, a killer reveal that isn't mind blowing, and the loss of one of the most lovable characters in the franchise. And on top of that, Scream 2 just hasn't aged that well. When I reach for a Scream movie to rewatch, it's almost never Scream 2. And it's not that it's offensively bad, it's just, it just pales in comparison to the original and really suffers from sequel syndrome. It's almost like a self fulfilling prophecy with what they said in the actual movie. Now, with that being said, Mickey got done dirty. One thing that I feel very strongly about is that Mickey got done dirty. Laurie Metcalf absolutely kills it as Mrs. Loomis. She does crazy and unhinged so well, especially at the time. You knew her from Roseanne, nothing like this character. And she just comes in and acts her ass off. That wide eyed, unhinged, oh, she's not home right now, please leave a message sort of performance, that's fun to watch. But as a villain, Mickey is way more compelling. He's the horror film obsessed psycho who literally wants to blame movies in court, playing off of this whole conversation that was brimming through the entirety of the 90s that would really climax once Columbine happened and would again affect the franchise. And he gave a presence that really asked the question, what happens when we shine a light on some of the most destructive people and highlight them through books and through movies and all of this sort of stuff? It was something that challenged horror in a way that it needed to be challenged and adds to the timelessness of Scream because it's addressing themes rather than specific points in history, even if it's using some of those talking points as a through line. So Scream 2 for me is this weird combo of safety and killing the wrong character with cool moments, but an overall cheaper plot that overused some characters and underused others. Overrated, not terrible, but definitely not. I don't hold it in the same esteem that other Scream fans tend to hold it because usually that conversation goes one and then two, and then you see some fluctuation beyond that in most ranking lists. Not for me. I fundamentally believe that Scream 4 is a better film than Scream 2. I fundamentally believe that it is a tighter plot. I think it is a better presentation of the idea of sequelizing Scream. And I think its biggest sin is that it just simply was ahead of its time. It didn't really, the culture that it was satirizing and that it was commenting on hadn't fully become mainstream in the same way, and so at least not at that point. And so the people, not everybody got it. But if it would have come out even 5 years later, I think you're talking it being heralded in the same conversation as the first one. Is it messy? Absolutely. Does it have pacing issues? Sure. Is the third act in the hospital sequence a lot? Yes. But even with all of that, I really think Scream 4 is more interesting and more alive than Scream 2. Scream 4 was the first film that genuinely had the chance to throw a curveball at the status quo of the Scream universe, because even with Scream 3, it was still trying to capstone what the original was all about. Even if it was throwing this big twist into the plot, it was a twist that was predicated on everything that you already knew. This was an entirely different curveball. And Jill could have survived. She could have gone on to be this secret villain, right? Not everybody knows what the audience knows. You could have revealed that Stu is alive and either orchestrating this, or we almost give her an anti hero arc by making Stu the real big bad, something like that. You could have fully committed to the idea of fame obsessed internet era killers reshaping what Ghostface actually means. Instead, the movie pulls back right when it could have become legendary and redefined the franchise again. The bones are great. A new generation, social media frame, remakes, legacy characters. It's all rich territory. And Scream 4 actually has something to say about all of that. It's not just a sequel for the sake of sequelizing the. Simply put, it just feels like none of it actually has room to breathe. The film rushes so hard to juggle all of these ideas, all of these new characters, all of these kills, all of these callbacks, that we don't fully sit in how huge Jill's twist really is and how memorable that scene is where she is staging this assault. And if they just slow down a little bit and really lean into Jill as the anti Sydney, the way that the internet reshapes victimhood and fame, the idea of living your life in front of a camera, the idea of Ghostface as a brand that anyone could adopt. Scream 4 could have been the moment where the franchise truly broke its own rules in a big way and yet again redefined a generation. Instead, it flirts with that level of greatness, but it doesn't quite fully commit. Still, I take that ambition over Scream 2's safer and more just fine approach. Now, that being said, I have always been pretty open about preferring Wes's Scream movies to the post-Wes era. Now, I don't think they're trash by any stretch of the imagination. There is a lot good about the post-Wes era of Scream. great kills, some fantastic chase scenes, some strong set pieces. I really don't think it's a big deal that Ghostface used a shotgun. I know people went bug nuts over that, but he's used a gun before. And at some point, we do kind of have to ratchet things up at least a little bit, especially with what we established in 5 and the tone that we established in 5. But I just don't think that these movies are going to age very well. They're very of the time. They are designed to be good for clips, but they absolutely suffer as full movies. The requel discourse, the obsession with toxic fandoms and what a fandom should and shouldn't be, the constant winking at legacy IP, all of it is interesting, but feels antiquated. The original Scream movies were meta, but they were stories first and commentary second. The post West films sometimes feel like the exact opposite. They're overly meta while not necessarily successfully telling a cohesive story. And they're just simply not as timeless as the original movies were. And man, I remember when 5 was announced. It had been a decade. David Arquette, Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, they're all coming back. And everybody was stoked at what could be. And the problem is, it never really became. There are a lot of pieces, there are a lot of interesting moments, there are a lot of interesting concepts, there are definitely fun performances along the way. But as a whole, it underbakes the new characters. It doesn't give the OGs really room to do much of anything other than be pieces for things to happen. And so you just kind of end up with something that really does feel like closer to Scream fan fiction than it does an actual Scream entry. And then there's the big thing, right? They killed the wrong child. Like that, like Courtney Cox should have 1000% been the one to go. David Arquette, no. Like Dewey was the heart and soul. Like you leave him alone. And the fact that they brought him back as a drunk and totally robbed him of any character growth in 4 blew my mind that they did what they did. And then put her as this big wig. Like that part of it, Gail was always written to be the antagonist of the situation. Maybe not a big bad, but an antagonist of the situation. And so you underbake her, you give Dewey a bad setup, you kill him off, and then you expect us to care about Gail who's grieving? No. It doesn't add up to something that's going to age very well. And then the entirety of 6 being a more bombastic version of 5 with all of these callbacks and the Shrine of Ghostface and all of these different pieces, all of these winks, all of these nods. Even though Scream is one continuous timeline, I do think that history is going to see that there will be people who, in their rewatches, just skip 5 and 6 as a whole. And I think because of everything altogether, I think Scream 7 is going to be a bigger deal than 5 and 6. I genuinely think 7 is going to be a financial hit and have a huge impact on the story. And I know that there's a loud contingent of people online that are not going to support this movie for this reason and that reason. And I do understand the controversy that's hovering around this movie, just like I understood the controversy that was hovering around 6 when they didn't want to pay Nev what she was worth, and all of these different puzzle pieces that make the situation that we're in now. And there are people that are talking about spoiling it out of spite, which is seriously weird behavior. Get a pulse, go outside, touch grass, you're done being able to internet. And the reality is, horror is hot right now. Most general audience members are not terminally online tracking every single bit of drama about this franchise. So, Nev back as the lead, Sid back front and center. For those who are even adjacent to this corner of horror, Kevin Williamson, the original writer, directing for the first time in this franchise, and the marketing being on point so far, and then Stu coming back for people who know this is going to be a very big deal. I wanted to save one last hot take for the end. Scream 3 is a better movie than you remember. It has the second best reveal in the franchise, only behind the original. Roman being the mastermind behind Billy and Stu makes sense, and it doesn't ruin the original. The long lost brother twist works emotionally and thematically. You're talking about this character who was very clearly troubled and had very clearly did what she did, and then you take that and you build on that as that core driving point of the entire franchise. Not to mention, it is emblematic of the time that it came out. And if Scream 3 had ended the franchise I think it would have been a strong final note to end on. I liked Roman as a character. I think Roman was a good Ghostface, and I think the only problem is that Scream 1 and Scream 2 were vastly different movies. And so they were forced to go a very different route. And I think that very different route is part of what turns a lot of people off from this entry in the franchise. And all of the plot issues that center around the idea of it only being one Ghostface all get taken care of if you just color in the blank spots. Angelina very easily could have been the second Ghostface, even without it being expressly stated. We have a track record of Ghostface taking care of loose ends. One always betrays the other. So why is it surprising that once Roman, being this mastermind, no longer sees any value in Angelina, and it would make sense that that Roman would never give Angelina her moment, her villain monologue, her day in the sun, because for him, it is all about him and Sydney. It's all about making Sid pay for the crimes, for the sins of their mother. And Angelina was just a means to an end. Once you wrap that up, that whole exchange, that whole monologue, and at this point, everything that Sid has experienced, it is the first time that we see Nev take this character and say, okay, she's awesome, but like so like still outside of her depth, but manages to get through together in the first one. Second one, evolved version, where finally she's the one that puts a definitive end to the conversation. And then three, we get this exchange between the two of them. No, we don't have a lot of time with those two together, but that would make sense. If he is the evil mastermind, he would be pulling the strings from a distance, especially because he doesn't necessarily know where she is. And then once she's out in the open, then we get them together. So, what did you think? Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you disagree with? Let me know down in the comments